Well, good afternoon, boys and girls. How are you doing? So, have you ever wondered how all the laws that we have in our country were made? Well, I bet you did. And if you stop and think about it for a second, we have a ton of laws, don't we? Well, I thought with this week for our last assignment for Chapter 7, Minnesota's Newcomers, I'd ask you to do a nice little fun project. It's called How a Bill Becomes a Law in the United States of America. So it's a pretty lengthy process. And when our founding fathers set this country up, they made the process of creating laws a difficult one. And you think about it, that makes sense. You don't want people making laws that don't make any sense. And so you don't want making the process of making laws, you don't want it to be super easy and super short, because then people would just make these really silly laws that don't make any sense and would drive people crazy. So basically the process in making a law takes quite a bit of time. And I thought that as members of our great country, you should understand this, because you'll study more about this next year, but it'd be nice if you had the basics to how somebody comes up with an idea that they want to see made into a law. Okay? So that's what we're going to focus on right now in this tutorial and this assignment. And I think you're going to like it. It's going to be a fun one. So, this assignment is called How a Bill Becomes a Law. So what I'm asking you to do is, first off, just come up with an idea. And what I want you to understand here is we've already talked about, briefly, we've talked a little bit about how our country works. We talked about the three branches of government. We talked about the executive branch, which houses the president and the vice president. We've talked about the judicial branch, which houses our court system. And now we're going to be focusing on the legislative branch. These are the people that create our laws. Okay? The legislative branch. And at the federal level, it consists of the Congress. And remember, anytime you hear that word Congress, I'd like you to think of two things. That is the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. All right? So, all I'm asking you to do with this assignment is think. Think about something that you feel strongly about, that you want to see made into a law. You know, maybe you notice somebody in your family struggling with something. Maybe you notice an older brother or sister, a cousin, an aunt, or an uncle who want to go to college, but you know, college is pretty expensive. Wouldn't it be nice if college were like elementary, middle, and high school, where it's basically available to everyone? Okay, college you have to pay for, and it's quite expensive. So wouldn't it be nice if anybody was able to go to college without having to pay for it? Wow, that'd be huge. Well, if that's what you're interested, you can go ahead and use that. Or maybe you want to see, I don't know, something like people can get medical attention free of charge. Or maybe you want to see, like, so I'll give you a hint of I'll give you an idea, that somebody came up with years ago. If you've ever ridden the school bus, school buses are required by law to stop at all railroad tracks. Okay, and they have to come to a complete stop, and they open the door and they look right and they look left before they proceed. The reason why they do this is for safety reasons. Now, how did this happen? Well, we're going to talk about that today. Somebody had an idea. And that idea, and what they did is they called, the federal level, they called their congressman or congresswoman. And they said, hey, I have an idea. I think all school buses should stop, come to complete stop and look both ways before they cross railroad tracks. Maybe you want to see people not having to come to a stop sign, not having to stop if they're turning right. I don't know. You decide. What do you feel strongly about? Okay? That's what I'm asking you to think about. This is how our country works. So what's the process here? So anybody, and what I want you to understand is anybody can come up with an idea. Okay? An idea for a new law. Anybody. You can come up with an idea. I can come up with an idea. We can't write it, but what we would do, we would call our representatives, one of our representatives. All right? Say, hey, I have an idea. I think that all people should be allowed to catch as many fish as they want and keep as many fish as they'd like. No fishing season, don't have to pay any money. Okay, that's just an example. So you would call up your congressperson, and if they thought that was a good idea, they would go through this process that we're about to talk about. All right, so what I'm asking you to do is go to Schoology. Go to Schoology and take a look at this end of chapter assignment, How a Bill Becomes a Law. All right, here are the instructions I have written down for you. I'm going to explain them to you right now. So maybe this will be easier than you reading it. And maybe if you have any questions, my video tutorial here will help you out. So what I'm asking you to do is come up with an idea and write down that idea. Now you can do this assignment on paper, or if you prefer to do it on Notability, you can do it on Notability, Google Slides, I don't care. Whatever makes you happiest. I thought if you want to do a paper and pencil assignment, that might be a little bit easier for you. That way you can use some colored pencils, you can use some crayons, whatever. Decorate it and have as much fun as you want to have, all right? What's important here is you just understand the process of how our government works. All right, so this is a picture here of what a final project might look like. You know, here we had somebody who had an idea, and they didn't write their idea on here yet. They used a house with some balloons, and there's 8 steps in this process, okay? And if you remember that movie Up, they kind of use that. And here's another one using a gumball machine. Again, I don't know what their idea was here. That's not important. But what is important is they have the 8 steps written down. Another example here with a rainbow. So that's what I'm asking you to do, is come up and display your idea. Write your idea. If you're using a piece of paper, write your idea down all across the top so everybody can see it. All right? Decorate it as nice as you can. Then I'm asking you to familiarize yourself with these 8 steps and make sure you put these 8 steps in order. All right, so what happens first? Well, an idea, if you have an idea that you would like to see made into a law, first you have to go ahead and contact your lawmaker. That's somebody in Congress. Now, you are what's called a constituent. You're a member of the public. And anybody in the public can come up with an idea. There is some second graders in a small town in Minnesota a few years ago had an idea. They thought that the blueberry muffin should be our state muffin. So they contacted their state legislators. And it's now a law that says that our state muffin in Minnesota is the blueberry muffin. All right? Now, if you think that sounds kind of silly, that's okay, but that's how things happen. Okay? So here, what I need you to do, here are all the 8 steps I want you to take and use for this project. Here, they're not in any order, but I want you to put these in numerical order. All right? The first one is an idea is proposed by constituents or lawmakers. That's number 1. Well, again, I want you to display that either electronically or on a piece of paper. Number 2, a member of Congress must agree to sponsor and introduce a bill. All right? When you have your idea, you contact a member of Congress. If a member of Congress agrees to your idea, They agree to take that really cool idea and run with it. They want to go ahead and say, yep, boy, there ought to be a law that says that all school buses should stop before coming to railroad tracks and open up their doors. If they believe so strongly in it, they're going to do what's called sponsor that bill. They're going to take it and they're going to be in charge of it becoming a law. It's a lengthy process, but that's their job as a member of the legislative branch of the United States government. All right, that's step number 2. Then they go to step number 3. The bill, it's now a bill. This idea is now a bill because you have a member of Congress who thinks it's a great idea and they want to sponsor it. They want to see it go all the way. This bill is given a title and a number, and it's introduced in either the House of Representatives or the Senate. Remember, I told you, when you think of the name Congress, you think of 2 things: House of Representatives and the Senate. All right, so that's step number 3. Make sure you have that displayed somewhere. Then you have step number 4. The bill is sent to a committee. All right, so again, I told you this was a long and lengthy process, going from an idea to a bill to a law. And it's done this way on purpose. So this committee, there are several committees, who will go ahead and discuss the merits of this idea. Is it really important that school buses stop at railroad tracks? Why should they? So if they agree it's a good thing to do, they will keep going with it. All right, and then it goes on to the next step. Step number 5. The bill is debated. Debated, it means they talk again about the good points and the bad points. And they approve it, and then they send it to the other house. So if it starts out, let's say, at the House of Representatives, it goes through a committee, a selection of committees in the House of Representatives. They discuss it. They talk about the good and the bad. Then if they get done talking about the good and the bad and they still think it's a good idea, they send it to the other house, which is the Senate. And the Senate does the exact same thing the House of Representatives done. Now, it could start in either house. It could start in the Senate, or it doesn't matter where it starts. But what it is important is that it has to go through both houses, okay? It has to go through the Senate and the House of Representatives. That's step number 5. All right, so if it makes it this far, then it goes to what's called a conference committee. Step number 6, the bill gets approved in a conference committee. Again, another committee that just decides. Maybe they might make some changes. These changes to this idea or bill, now a bill, could be called amendments. They might add some things to it. All right, it could be totally unrelated to what the original idea was. But if some people think, well, it's a good idea, it's going to pass, they'll add things to it. All right, so that's step number 6. And then, once it's gone through all these steps at the federal level, it has to be, this bill now, before it becomes a law, it has to be approved by the President of the United States to become a law. If he or she approves it, it's now a law. Now, if he or she says no, that no is not called a no, it's called a veto. And they say, nope, this idea stinks, send it back to Congress and see what they want to do with it. So Congress has a couple choices. They can either put it to a vote themselves, and if there's like 535 members of Congress in both houses combined. Now, if you get 66% of them who vote yes, they have done what's called overridden. They have overridden the president's veto. It could still become a law. It's a very tough thing to do. Very tough thing to do. So, that's step number 7. All right, and step number 8, that's why I mentioned the Congress may override the veto with a 2/3 vote. And then, it doesn't show it here, but then step number 9 would be, it's now a law. So, those are the 8 or 9 steps and how an idea goes from being an idea to a bill and then to a law at the federal level. And again, what I want you to understand is anybody can come up with an idea. Anybody, but only a member of Congress can go ahead and make it into a law. Okay? So that's your assignment here. Again, you decide what your idea is. You decide how you want to display this, either electronically or on paper and pencil. All right? All right. Please have fun with this. I think this is going to be kind of cool. I'm anxious to see how you're going to do with this. I think you're going to like it. And if you have any questions, please give me an email. Shout out. Okay? Thanks again. Have a good day.